Hello, Mr. Weinberger. It's a pleasure to meet with you today in the Dorothy Dougherty Library in the West Virginia Museum of American Glass in Weston, West Virginia. I understand you're a longtime resident of Weston and that your family roots go back several generations. Can you tell us a little bit about the Weinberger family?
Yes. My father came to this country in 1921 at the request of some of my mother's relatives who were already here.
Okay.
And they were working in the glass industry here. And they got together and were running a small glass factory just south of Weston here.
Okay.
And they needed a mold maker. Well, my father was the son of a mold maker over in Turkey, Constantinople, Turkey.
Wow.
And there was a picture in our family, and I don't know where it got to, but it's gone, where my father was turning the headstock spindle on a lathe, while his father was turning out the mold on the inside. And
So
I guess that makes me the third generation mold maker in the Weinberger family.
Okay. The molds were made of wood back then.
The molds were made of wood over
Okay.
and they used that European spruce. But that spruce wood had to come from the north side of a mountain because it was tougher and more hardy
Okay.
and harder wood. So
Neat.
that's one thing I remember Dad telling me about.
Okay.
So when he came over here, then he went to work in this little factory south of Weston, and that was, of course, I was born in 1923, 2 years later.
Okay.
Myself and my twin sister.
Oh.
Yeah. So we grew up, and he's working there in that glass factory. And of course, he didn't know too much English language, so everybody helped him along, and he was a very popular person because he would fix everybody's guns and everybody's fishing reels and things like that. Yeah.
So he was a real handyman.
Yeah, he was a real
Yeah.
handyman.
Yeah.
But he did little things around the factory there that they needed little attachment made for some machine or something like that. He was able to do that, improve that machine, you know, or even make the chim machine itself that they needed, you know. He was just that good at it. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get involved into the mold making then?
Well, it's a long story because when I was in high school, over here at St. Patrick's High School, I was in 1934. My father bought a wood turning lathe and a bandsaw that he needed to make molds, patterns for molds in that little glass factory. But it was in the basement of our home.
Okay.
And well, time I was 10, 11 years old, I was already into making models of airplanes and things like this, you know.
So you
And
had
I got a little bit handy with that lathe and that bandsaw.
Okay.
But in the meantime, I was in high school and I had just a wonderful teacher, and she taught me geometry. She made sure that I knew it, so most I heard from her, "You can do better than that." Her name was Sister Mary Grace. So, and I did learn, yeah.
Okay.
And from there on, I used that knowledge all through my working life.
Okay.
I
So
really did, yeah.
geometry was an
Yes.
important
Yes.
factor.
Well, geometry is important when you're making stuff, you know.
Right.
Parts of a circle and squaring
Right,
things up
sure.
and things like this, you know.
Yep.
So, 11 days after I graduated from high school in 1941. Of course, we was coming out of the Depression yet. And there was all these government programs where they were teaching young people skills and things like this, you know. So I had signed up in the NYA, National Youth Administration. I had signed up with them because it was woodwork. I signed up for pattern making because it was woodwork, and I was fairly skilled with a little bit of woodwork then, you know.
Okay.
So I went down to Charleston, which is our capital city, and they put me in what they called a naval ordnance plant, where they made these great big cannons for the battleships and all that, you know. But they had a pattern shop there, and they had a gentleman there that was teaching pattern making. And right away, the geometry come in handy for me because I knew I could read blueprints right away, you know, things like that. They put me to work to make what was it? The transmission box for washing machine. Back then it was a roller type washing machines, you know.
Right, the old angles.
And I was making a pattern for that. And I was there for about 6 months, and I was getting along pretty good with it. There's a Mr. Rat King there was teaching. Well, along about 6 months after I went there, the war was coming on and everything, and they were starting an apprenticeship program in Portsmouth Navy Yard, Norfolk Navy Yard in Portsmouth, Virginia. So they reached out to all the NYA groups and picked out 2 or 3 people from each group, you know.
Okay.
And I was one they picked to send on down to Portsmouth, Virginia. And I signed in for a 4-year apprenticeship. Well, what did I run into there? A lot of these old pattern makers, the retired pattern makers, they had come back to work there in the Navy Yard because of the war, you know.
Right.
And I ran into all these old pattern makers down there, and boy, were they helpful, I tell you. And
what had they made patterns for? What were they making patterns for?
I made patterns for old battleship Missouri. Although she was made up in New York, they had a real good foundry there in Portsmouth, and they had a great big pattern shop there. It's about 3 stories high.
Wow.
And all these old pattern makers actually making patterns, but teaching as apprentices at the same time, you know. I made patterns for the old battleship Missouri. And later on, I'd like to say, well, she's mothballs now, but I'm still going strong.
Yeah, that's right.
But the Missouri was a ship that the actual armistice was signed on when Japan surrendered. You remember that?
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, she was down that area at that time. Yeah.
So then how did this evolve into the glass industry pattern making?
Well, after I finished my apprenticeship, I didn't like the town down there, and I had a choice whether I wanted to come home, not thinking. So I decided I was going to come home.
Okay.
Yeah.